high above the North Atlantic. A Boeing 747 cut through the darkness of one of the fiercest storms ever recorded. Rain pounded against the fuselage. Lightning split the clouds like shattered glass, and turbulence shook every seat. Inside the cabin, passengers clung to armrests and whispered desperate prayers. Then, over the aircraft's intercom, came a trembling voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer James Wilson. We have a medical emergency. Captain Mitchell is unconscious. If there is anyone on board with combat aviation experience, please identify yourself. I cannot face this storm alone." Row 23, seat C. A woman stirred from uneasy sleep. Her name was Keisha Washington. At 34, she had trained herself to sleep anywhere, a habit earned from long missions where rest was a rare luxury. But the urgency in the young co-pilot's voice forced her fully awake. Around her, chaos spread. Children cried. Families texted farewell messages. And in the first-class cabin, businessman Richard Blackwood adjusted his expensive glasses and scoffed, muttering as if anyone qualified would be flying economy. No one looked at Keisha. To them, she was just another ordinary passenger, a black woman in simple jeans and a plain blouse, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She did not look like someone who could save 312 lives. The plane shook violently as the storm raged. James's voice cracked over the intercom again. "Please, if anyone has military flight training, step forward. I've never flown through anything like this. I need help." Richard Blackwood rose, puffing his chest with false confidence. "Listen here," he shouted toward the cockpit. "My brother-in-law is a private pilot. I've flown with him dozens of times. I can handle this." But a flight attendant rushed to block him. "Sir, we need combat experience. Civilian training won't be enough in conditions like these?" Richard sneered. "I paid $15,000 for these seats. I have more experience than anyone here. Don't you dare doubt me." At that moment, Keisha stood, quietly, calmly, with movements precise, almost rehearsed. She walked down the aisle, and heads turned in disbelief. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "Colonel Keisha Washington, United States Air Force, over 500 hours in F-22 Raptors. Specialized in storm navigation and emergency procedures." Silence followed. Disbelief filled the cabin. Richard laughed bitterly. "You've got to be joking. She doesn't belong in first class, let alone the cockpit." But Keisha's gaze carried a weight that silenced even the flight attendant. It was the look of someone who had walked through fire before, someone who had led men into storms far worse than this. James Wilson appeared in the doorway, pale with terror. "Captain Mitchell is seizing." "I can't do this alone." Richard tried again. "I've flown in luxury jets across Europe. 200 hours as a passenger. I know procedures." But Keisha's voice cut through like steel. "James, altitude, speed, weather conditions." Automatically, he replied, recognizing command. 38,000 feet. 450 knots. Crosswinds 120, gusting to 160. Keisha nodded, then recited without hesitation. "Emergency procedure for loss of pressurization. Oxygen masks. Emergency descent to 10,000 feet. Descent angle not exceeding 15 degrees. Squawk 7-7-0. For 2 minutes. She listed protocols only a trained combat pilot could know by heart. The cabin fell silent. James's relief was visible. But Richard sneered again. "Anyone can memorize from Wikipedia. Show me credentials before I trust my life to this charade." Whispers spread. Some passengers nodded in doubt. An elderly woman whispered, "She looks so young. Is she really qualified?" Keisha felt the sting of prejudice, the same sting she had faced countless times in her career. She remembered being doubted, questioned, passed over for promotions despite flawless records. She remembered the whispers about quotas. But she also remembered why she became the most decorated pilot of her generation. Because she turned doubt into fuel, insults into focus, prejudice into motivation. She met Richard's arrogant stare. "There are pilots who fly when it's easy, pilots who fly when it's hard, and pilots who fly when it's impossible. I am the third kind. And right now, impossible is the only option." The plane plunged violently. Screams filled the cabin. Yet Keisha stood firm, balanced as if turbulence were nothing more than a breeze. "What qualifies me," she continued, "is not medals or hours logged. It's that I've flown through war zones with 2 engines out, no navigation and missiles locked on my aircraft. And I still brought every soldier home alive." She entered the cockpit. For the first time since the crisis began, hope flickered. Inside, Captain Mitchell convulsed, foam at his lips. James froze in terror. Kesha's voice snapped like a commander. "First aid now. We have 15 minutes before cardiac arrest." She worked with precision, stabilizing the captain while simultaneously adjusting flight instruments. James stared in awe. "Colonel, how do you know emergency medicine?" 10 years flying rescue missions," she replied calmly. "When you're the only barrier between a soldier and death, you learn quickly." Meanwhile, Richard poisoned first class with doubt. "Look at her clothes. Do you really think someone like that commands a fighter jet? She doesn't even belong here." But then Kesha's voice thundered through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Colonel Washington. I am now in command of this aircraft. Remain calm and follow crew instructions. I will get you to the ground safely." Authority radiated from her words. Even Richard felt a chill. James regained composure under her direction. She assigned him tasks with crisp efficiency. Yet when she began sketching flight calculations that ignored safety manuals, James protested. "Colonel, with all respect, this defies protocol." Kesha's lips curved into the faintest smile. "James, sometimes following the manual kills people. Knowing when to break it saves them. I've done it before. I'll do it again." Then, to silence all doubt, she contacted Andrews Air Force Base, Colonel Washington, Calcine Spectre, requesting emergency confirmation. The radio crackled. "Spectre? This is Commander Rodriguez. We confirm your identity. You disappeared from radar 20 minutes ago. The Air Force is mobilized searching for you." Gasps echoed through the cabin. Richard turned pale. The woman he mocked as an imposter was in fact one of the most feared and respected pilots in the U.S. military. Andrews cleared all East Coast airspace for her. Every base, every runway, every radar focused solely on her flight. Even the Pentagon was watching. The storm worsened. Winds reached 180 kilometers an hour, hail like stones pounding the aircraft. All airports closed. They were the only plane left in the sky. Kesha's decision was swift, controlled spiral descent. Through the eye of the storm. James gaped. "That maneuvers for fighter jets, not a 747. "Then today," she replied, hands steady on the controls, "we make history." The plane dove into the storm's heart. Spiraling through vertical winds no civilian aircraft had ever survived. Lightning tore across the sky. Passengers clung to each other in terrified silence. But through Keisha's calm mastery, the aircraft remained stable. General Hayes from the Pentagon cut through the radio. "Spectre, is it true you once guided 17 damaged aircraft out of a sandstorm, without even being in the cockpit?" "Confirmed," Kesha answered, her voice unshaken as she danced across the controls. "I see storms in 3 dimensions. If it flies, I can guide it home." For 15 agonizing minutes, she threaded the impossible descent. And finally, the lights of Dover Air Force Base pierced through the storm below. Emergency vehicles lined the runway. Foam covered the asphalt. Ambulances waited. "Brace for landing," Kesha commanded. Her voice calm, unbreakable. The Boeing touched down smoother than anyone believed possible. Applause erupted. Tears flowed. They had survived. In that moment, Richard Blackwood realized his prejudice nearly cost him, and everyone else, their lives. He had judged a legend by her skin, her clothes, her seat class, and he was devastatingly, humiliatingly wrong. Months later, Keisha Washington was promoted to Brigadier General, the youngest black woman to achieve the rank. Her storm navigation technique became standard in aviation manuals worldwide. Universities honored her. Young cadets quoted her words, "Let them underestimate you. While they waste energy doubting, you spend it becoming unforgettable." Richard, meanwhile, lost everything. His arrogant remarks leaked online, destroying his reputation. His wife left him. His business collapsed. He became an ordinary salesman, forced to walk past billboards of Kesha in uniform with the caption, "Leadership has no color. It has character." Years later, they crossed paths in an airport. He approached timidly, suitcase in hand, a shell of his former self. "General Washington," he whispered, "I came to apologize." Kesha studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she said quietly, "Mr. Blackwood, you gave me the greatest gift that day. You reminded me why I do what I do. Every life I save, every cadet I mentor, every barrier I break. I do it because people like you need to be proven wrong." And with that, she walked away, her legacy towering above him like a storm that no prejudice could ever tame. Because true greatness does not ask permission to shine. It simply does.